This is the Moses who said to the Israelites, God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your brothers. This is the one who was in the congregation in the wilderness with the angel who spoke to him at Mount Sinai and with our fathers.
Yeah. Oh, that's another one.
It mentions an angel in the burning bush, too, doesn't it? I should look that up. I think he says the angel of the Lord there at the burning bush. But yeah,
I don't know. I was thinking there might be something in 2 Peter that has to do with it says angels long to look into these things. I forget exactly what the verse or whatever, or what the context is, but I think he's talking about the mystery of the gospel, and he's saying that angels.
Things which angels long.
Yeah, they were serving in the Old Testament. They didn't know what they were doing, but I don't know.
My translation's NIV a little different. It says, he was in the assembly in the desert with the angel who spoke to him on Mount Sinai and with our fathers, and he received living words to pass on to us. So it sounds like he received the law while he was on the mountain with the angel.
So somehow, I don't know how they get that out of the Exodus account. I personally couldn't find it.
Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush.
So there's an angel at the burning bush who talks about
But if you keep talking, that angel of the Lord is Jehovah. That's the Lord himself.
Mm-hmm.
If you keep looking at that, that's the angel of the Lord, being the Lord.
Huh. Because he says remove the sandals
Yeah.
for the feet.
Same one that talked to Abraham, the 3 angels. You realize one of them was the Lord.
Right.
They leave and only 2 of them arrive inside. One of them was the pre-incarnate Christ, probably.
And
So do you think that the same thing is that the one that was at Mount Sinai was the angel of the Lord?
I don't think so, because it doesn't say the angel of the Lord, and it says angels, and then here in Hebrews it says it's contrasting the two. That delivered by angels and that delivered by Jesus. So basically we're having to take, based just on this few New Testament verses, the law was given through angels. There's probably a better way to substantiate that in the Old Testament. Unfortunately, I just couldn't do it.
He destroyed the tablets, right? And then he was given them again.
Right, Moses was.
And actually, the second time he wrote it, which is kind of weird. Moses did the writing on the redone tablets, right? It was the Lord's hand that did it originally. Do I remember that right?
I think the Ten Commandments had it that way. I don't remember the text actually saying that. It might have, but I just don't remember. But yeah, I read through the Sinai account a couple times. I couldn't find the angels mentioned there. But it was at least the Pharisees. When Stephen's talking to the Pharisees, at least even the Pharisees understood it as being delivered by angels. You received the law as delivered by angels, but you did not. All that being said, it's talking about the law there in Hebrews 2. That which delivered by angels, and then what does he say about it?
It's binding.
Verse 2, yeah. Proved. How does your translation say? Read verse 2.
For if the message spoken by angels was binding, and every violation and disobedience received its just punishment, how shall we escape if we ignore such a great salvation?
That binding. Do you have the Greek word there for binding?
What verse?
Verse 2. For since the message was put by angels, mine says, proved to be reliable. The NIV is binding.
What verse again?
Is it,
2:2.
what is this word? B-E-B-A-I-O-S? Is that right? That's what it says. Firm, sure,
Confirmed.
binding.
It proved reliable, and in every transgression and disobedience received a just retribution. I looked up a couple verses in the Old Testament that were taught there in the law, talking about the consequences of disobedience. And the first was Deuteronomy 28. We don't have to read the whole thing, but we just kind of thumb through it. You can look, it's a really long chapter. The first few paragraphs are all about the blessings to the Israelites if they obey. If you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all his commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the earth. Blessings will come, abundance of crops, live long in the land, all the good stuff. Starting in 28 verse 15, But if you will not obey the voice of the Lord your God, or be careful to do all his commandments and his statutes that I command you today, then all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Cursed shall you be in the city, cursed shall you be in the field. Cursed. Then the rest of the chapter, the bulk of the chapter, from verse 15 through verse 68, is all about this is the negative consequences of disregarding. And they're pretty bad. You're going to have a foreigner rule over you. You're going to be driven from your land. All these things these are the consequences of your disobedience. These are the rewards for your obedience to the nation as a whole. But then if you flip over to Numbers, chapter 15, it's the same idea, but it's subtly different. So I'm going to read Numbers 15, verse 30.
Loud or just loud?
Oh, for all of us.
You said 15:30.
Numbers 15:30.
But the person who does anything with a high hand, whether he is a native or a sojourner, reviles the Lord, and that person shall be cut off from among his people, because he has despised the word of the Lord and has broken his commandment. That person shall be utterly cut off. His iniquity shall be on him.
So what's the difference between those two, the Deuteronomy 28 and Numbers 15?
The Numbers one seems a little more lenient.
Numbers seems more lenient. You're cut off from your people, as opposed to you're going to be driven from the land and you're going to be buried.
All these horrible things
Cut
happen
off
to you.
his kids.
It might.
Yeah.
Shall be utterly cut off seems to be killed. His iniquity shall be honored. It could be ostracized. There are some things that were punishment by being removed from the camp. Numbers is to an individual, where the Deuteronomy 28 is to the whole group.
Numbers is to who?
It says if anyone. So basically, you can have the nation of Israel. Everybody's doing good. They're following the commands. They're keeping the Passover and the feasts and doing everything right. God's blessing them in the land. But this one jerk over here is willfully disobeying the commands of Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. He says that individual is going to be cut off. But if the whole people group in Deuteronomy 28 is disobedient, they're all going to be driven from the land. So there's kind of this dual punishment. The one was if you, plural, neglect what I'm saying, I'm going to punish you as a nation. But there's also the individual. If you, singular, disregard what I'm saying, then even if the whole people are getting a blessing, you might be cut off. You see does everybody kind of understand what I'm saying there? So they're both kind of what the writer of Hebrews is saying. It was a serious thing. This was the law delivered by angels. Moses gave it, and it had consequences. Number one, if the whole people were disobedient, they were going to not receive the promises that he's been saying. You're going to receive this land. Unless you're idolatrous, then you're going to get kicked out. I'm going to make you a blessing to all the nations. Unless you disregard me, then you're going to be spurned by all the nations. I'm going to have you're going to be my people, and I'm going to be your God. Unless you reject me, unless you are idolatrous, then I'm going to make a foreign king rule over you. But even if the nation's going good, the nation, everybody's kind of doing the right thing. There's one little guy who comes up and says, I'm going to disregard the Lord. Even on an individual basis, the law was serious, and there was a punishment for that. For the intentional, willful sin, you're cut off from your people, perhaps meaning you're physically killed. There were a lot of punishments in the law that were physical death, things like adultery, or talking back to your parents. It was pretty severe. And so that's the point that the writer of Hebrews is making. All right, we're all Jews here. We all know what the law says. We all know how severe the law is. And it was delivered by angels. And I just got done telling you how much more important Jesus is than the angels. But I want to read two quick verses.